All right. It is a new day, a new dawn, new information and new news to talk about. New Trudeau has officially listened to the Premier's call for urgent meeting to discuss Canada-US relations. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been pushing for a new trade deal with the US that would exclude Mexico. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Premier Doug Ford, Ontario Premier, attend an announcement at Seneca College. This was a picture taken a while ago, just for the news of today. Big news though. Trudeau orders emergency meeting with premiers to discuss Trump's tariff threat. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has ordered an emergency meeting with Canada's premiers on Wednesday to discuss President-elect Donald Trump's recent threat to impose a 25% tariff, on goods from both Canada and Mexico. Trump calls for threat. Trudeau calls emergency meeting over Trump's Canada tariff threat. US elect posting on social media about plan to impose 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada. Man, I've said it time and time again. Trump is not going to be playing any games in his second term. He's going to be taking this more seriously than he ever has. If you thought he was taking it serious in the first term, round two is going to be intense. I'm very excited to see what he does, but I'm also a little worried, not fully worried. I know Trump doesn't fully care about Canada and the relations fully, but we are the number one buyer of United States goods as of 2022. So billions of dollars going back and forth between Canada and the US. Trump obviously does care about that to some extent, but how much of an extent, I don't know, because he himself has a lot to deal with in fixing the United States. Excuse me. Need a sip of water. Sip of water for the working man. Justin Trudeau has called an emergency meeting with provincial premiers across Canada after the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump threatened a 25% tariff on us and Mexico. Trump posted on social media that he would sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all goods products coming into the U.S. Trudeau claims that he said on Tuesday he had held a good conversation with Trump shortly after the social media post. I don't know how good of a conversation Trudeau thinks he had, but I'm not taking his word for it. That's for sure. Got a couple different announcements from certain PMs and premiers talking about this. Obviously, this is the biggest and latest announcement from Trump that he is going to be doing this. And quite honestly, Trudeau, is shitting his pants. He doesn't know what to do. He's not prepared for this. He wasn't prepared during the first term of Trump. We've seen videos of him in the G20 summit meetings back in, 2016, 2017, 2018, around that time. Trudeau was on the outside looking in as every world leader surrounded Donald Trump. Trudeau, internationally, is looked at as one of the biggest jokes, one of the biggest laughingstocks. He is disregarded, he is thrown away, he is ignored by world leaders that you would consider to be not great people themselves. So what does that tell you about Trudeau as a person?
There is an emergency meeting set for this afternoon with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the country's premiers. It follows U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's big tariff threat. Simone Gavros is in studio with the latest from overnight.
Well, Lynette, premiers across the country called for this urgent meeting on U.S.-Canada relations prior to Trump's tariff threat Monday night. But the meeting today will heavily focus on what this means for the country. Now, the upcoming meeting tonight comes on the heels of an emergency debate last night, and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland was highlighting the importance of trade between the two countries.
The fact is, we need them, and they also need us. Canada is the largest market for the U.S. in the world, larger than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. It is also the case that the things we sell to the United States are the things they really need.
Wow, very deep stuff coming from Chrystia Freeland. Hold on, just one more time, that last little part there.
It is also the case that the things we sell to the United States are the things they really need.
Oh my God, I can't believe this is the person who is partially running the country. And she's in a very high up position. And that's the best she can come up with? That's all she has. The stuff we sell is the stuff they really need. Holy, we are cooked as a country. Donald Trump posting, as everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels we've never seen before. Right now, a caravan coming from Mexico, composed of thousands of people, seems to be unstoppable in its quest to come through our currently open border. On January 20th, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the US. And it's ridiculous open borders. This is what he wants to do. And like I've said, I'm going to keep saying it. Trump is not playing around in this second term. He's not playing around. This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. So that's what we're dealing with. That's what we are dealing with. Moving on, Pierre Poilievre says, ban the drugs. Ban the drugs. Let's take a listen.
I don't want to stop drug overdoses to please Donald Trump. I want to stop drug overdoses so that there's not one more mother with her face buried in a pillow sobbing that she just lost her kid. After 47,000 other Canadians have died, that's more than we lost in the Second World War. A 200% annual increase in drug overdose deaths have resulted from Justin Trudeau's radical liberalization of drugs. Justin Trudeau must put partisanship aside, not just for the sake of Team Canada, but for the sake of our people, and fully reverse his liberalization of drugs. Ban them, prosecute those who traffic in them, secure our borders against the illegal importation of fentanyl ingredients, put people in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. That is necessary now more than ever.
Yeah, there's a pretty bad drug crisis, especially in places like Vancouver. I'm gonna go on Twitter right now, and I could probably just type in BC drug crisis, and I guarantee you I will get tons of videos of either people overdosing. Yep, I'm looking at it right now. I don't think I can show this stuff on stream. I can show like that, for example, very briefly, but it's literally a 2-second search. You can find, here's another one I'll just bring up very quickly. Look at this. People just like on the street hanging out. Yeah, not good. A whole lot of not good going on there. And the last thing I want to get into before we get into, I believe, either House of Commons or question period. It is Wednesday, so today technically should be a big day when it comes to question period. Let's see. I'm going to go for Justin Trudeau's itinerary, and he will be attending question period today at 2 p.m. So we will hear the rat himself, Justin Trudeau. But I wanted to finish off this. This happened about 10 days ago. This was a live rally, and I want to finish this off before we get into anything else. Let's take a listen. I want to thank you all for joining. If you're new here, make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button. Thank you very much for being here. Let's get into it.
We will sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build homes. And you know what warms my heart? The vision of a family rolling up in their U-Haul to move into their wonderful new home in the former headquarters of the CBC. And we're not just going to build homes, we're going to develop our resources. To do that, we need to get the government gatekeepers out of the way again. It takes 19 years to get a mine approved in Canada. No wonder we are importing critical minerals. You see these people driving around proud as punch that they have an electric car. Well, where did the lithium come from for that battery? Coal burning China. Burning coal into the air to refine the lithium over there that we have over here beneath our feet, but we don't mine lithium in Canada. In fact, we have almost no lithium production, despite the fact that we are have the fifth biggest reserves. There is one mine in Canada that does harvest some lithium, and Trudeau authorized it to be sold to China. So they take our lithium over there, they burn coal to refine it, then they send back the batteries and they make all the money. Aren't we a bunch of suckers? And then we have radical, fanatical, environmentalist Stéphane Guilbeault. Guy wants to ban road building. He's against nuclear. He wants to shut down our forestry sector because he says the caribou are all going to die if we keep harvesting trees. This guy has no problem shipping the jobs over to China while he shuts down our industries here in Canada. When I'm Prime Minister, we're going to reverse everything he's done. We will repeal C-69 and make this the fastest place in the developed world to get a mining permit. We're going to approve pipelines to deliver our energy, built with Canadian steel. We're going to approve natural gas liquefaction plants. We've got 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in Canada. The world desperately needs it, and the price is 5 times higher in Asia as it is over here. Trudeau says there's no business case. When you can buy something for $1 and sell it for $5, I think that's a pretty good business case. So do the Americans. The Americans have built 7 liquefaction plants in the last decade. The Qataris have doubled their production. The Germans built an import terminal for LNG from concept to completion in 194 days. That's how long it takes to get the application form here in Canada. And meanwhile, we've had the Greeks, the Germans, the Japanese all send their leaders here to ask for our natural gas. When I'm Prime Minister, we will rapidly approve these projects. We have massive technological and meteorological advantages. Why? We have clean hydroelectricity to power our liquefaction plants. We have, what else does it take to liquefy gas? Cold weather. What do we have in Canada? Oh, stop your complaining. It's not that cold here. Try coming to Ottawa. You see how cold it got last winter? We even saw Justin Trudeau with his hands in his own pockets. But cold weather actually makes it 25% cheaper to liquefy gas than it takes to do it in the U.S. Gulf Coast. And it takes half the time, it takes 20 days to ship gas from the U.S. Gulf Coast to Asia. It takes 10 days from the west coast of British Columbia. In other words, half the shipping time, 25% weather advantage, clean hydroelectricity, an abundant supply. That's why I will issue rapid permits to build LNG. We'll ship it off to Asia to displace Asian coal and reduce global emissions by 2.5 billion tons. By displacing that coal, it's more than Canada emits an entire year. My friends, we'll ship it off to Europe, break European dependence on Putin, and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. And we'll fight for our loggers. Our logging industry is under attack. We got the best loggers in the world, the best forests. You know, they've invented this new technology. It sucks carbon out of the atmosphere, turns it into a building material. They're called trees. We have them here in Canada, but the NDP in this province have been destroying the industry and killing thousands of jobs in the process with their radical, woke policies. Meanwhile, Justin Trudeau got bulldozed by Donald Trump. He signed on to a trade deal with the White House that did not end the illegal softwood tariffs. When Harper was Prime Minister, he got a softwood deal, including a refund of the illegally collected tariffs within 80 days of becoming Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau has been Prime Minister for 9 years. He's had 3 presidents. And what do we have? $9 billion in illegally collected tariffs that are sitting in a vault in Washington. When I am Prime Minister, I will stand up and fight for our softwood industry to get our $9 billion back and our jobs. Government gatekeepers also stand in the way of our health care. We saw what they did with the outrageous violation of the rights of our nurses with that awful vaccine mandate that never should have happened.
Cheers to that.
And we have 32,000 immigrant nurses, 20,000 immigrant doctors that cannot work in Canada, not because they are unqualified, but because there is no way to prove their qualifications. We've had a red seal in this country for 72 years in the licensed trades. We have no equivalent in the professions. When I'm Prime Minister, I'll work with the provinces to get a blue seal professional training standard so Canadians who are trained in medicine abroad or immigrants who come here highly qualified can take a test, prove their qualifications, and get to work providing family doctors in our rural communities. And we'll stand up to Big Pharma and protect your rights. The latest government gatekeepers at Health Canada through C-47 trying to tax and regulate away your right to choose natural health supplements. I will repeal these rules and let you decide what you put in your body. We're going to remove the government gatekeepers at CRA. The tax system is the biggest gatekeeper of all, punishing hard work, leaving more money, putting more money in the hands of government bureaucrats where it goes to die, and discouraging people from improving their lives. Listen, there's a beautiful meme on the internet. It was a man explaining to his little boy what a tax form was. And the boy was crying. He said, "Dad, what's a tax form?" And he said, "Son, a tax form is like your report card at school, except the opposite. The better you do, the worse you get." Right? It's the fine you pay for the crime of hard work. And when the government gets more of the dollar you earn than you do, we've crossed a threshold where the government is turning our people into serfs and servants and the bureaucracy into the master. We have got to cut the taxes to reward hard work. I will pass a bring-it-home tax cut on work, investment, and making things in Canada with the explicit goal of allowing you to bring home more of your paycheck while we bring home more of our industry to this country. But we want you to bring it home, though, bring home those paychecks to safe neighborhoods. But increasingly, our streets are being taken over by crime. Do you have any crime out this way? Unbelievable. Nationwide, 50% increase in violent crime, 117% increase in gun crime. We've now lost more people to drug overdoses in the last decade than we lost as soldiers in the Second World War. 47,000 of our brothers, sisters, friends, and neighbors have died from these overdoses. This radical woke agenda the NDP Liberals have brought to our criminal justice system has brought carnage to our streets, and it must end. Catch and release, hug-a-thug policies allow the same repeat offenders to go loose again and again and again. The good news is we don't have a lot of criminals in Canada. The bad news is they're very productive. In Vancouver, they had to arrest the same 40 offenders 6,000 times in 1 year. That's one arrest per offender every 2 days. And let me tell you, if you're getting arrested every 2 days, you're working hard at it. I mean, you got to be up at the crack of dawn to rob that bank and carjack by noon, sell fentanyl on a street corner by 2 in the afternoon if you're going to get caught and arrested every 2 days. But think about this. If we put those 240 offenders behind bars and left them there would be 6,000 fewer people hit with a baseball bat, stabbed, robbed, raped, or murdered. Wouldn't it be? Isn't it that simple? Oh. So how many times were these 40 offenders arrested in a year? 6,000. I heard a lady's voice over there. Was that you? Oh, over there. She's fast. All right, there you go. You got a hunting. You like hunting? All right, there you go. Hold up the shirt. Show them what you got there. That's a Protect Our Hunters shirt. Any hunters in the crowd? Right on. Protect the hunters. So here's my common sense plan for the criminals. We're going to pass a law that says repeat violent offenders will be ineligible for bail, parole, house arrest, or probation. It will be jail, not bail. Jail, not bail. We will secure the borders with high-powered scanners that look into the shipping containers so that we can intercept the drugs and guns from coming in and the stolen cars from going out. And we will pay for it on the dollar-for-dollar principle by canceling the multi-billion-dollar outrageous and unjust gun grab. Our sports shooters and hunters will be able to keep their firearms. The police officers have already said the crime is not being done by licensed owners. It's being done by gangsters who don't have licenses, who get guns that come illegally over our borders from the United States of America. Do you agree with that, Rob? And you are a former police officer. In fact, Rob he has an incredible career. He used to actually burglarize the houses of criminals when he was an RCMP officer and put cameras and listening devices in there. So chances are, if you are a criminal from the neighborhood, he has visited your home in the past. Smile, you're on candid camera.
That's amazing.
He arrested a lot of bad guys. I put him on the National Security Committee. So he can't talk about anything he does. If he's not bragging about his work on Parliament Hill, it's not because he isn't doing any, it's because it's all top secret. He's interrupting the spies and the foreign agents and others who would do harm for our country. Thank God we have a great guy like this fighting for us. And Rob will tell you the people with licenses to own a firearm are the least likely to commit a gun crime. Statistically speaking, they've already gone through all the vetting. And so what we need, Trudeau wants to ban Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle. Grandpa Joe's not the problem. Here's how it is. I want to protect Canadians from criminals. NDP Liberals want to protect turkeys from hunters. Canadians will decide which they prefer. But we absolutely. And we have to stop the drugs as well. Drugs, this radical experiment imposed by the wokeocracy in British Columbia with the support of both the NDP and Liberals has done two things. It has killed our people, and it has enriched money-sucking, parasitical companies and bureaucrats. Let's remember how this thing started. 30 years ago, corrupt pharmaceutical companies flooded North America with OxyContin, claiming it was neither lethal nor addictive. They knew they were lying. Documents show that they knew internally they were lying. They paid bonuses to their distributors for each overdose they caused. They had to pay $54 billion in settlements to the U.S. governments who sued them for it because they were caught carrying out this scam. Now, we're told the solution is to give out more pharmaceutical opioids, paying off the same corrupt companies that caused the crisis in the first place. And the bureaucracy, by the way, your local public health bureaucracy in British Columbia is absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Bonkers. And you know what? They don't want to solve the problem. Because if all the tent encampments and the addiction went away, then they wouldn't have jobs. You know what I mean? It's incredible in government. Every time we give out money to a bureaucracy to solve a problem, this is what happens. I'm at the Finance Committee. They come back during the budget consultations, and never have any of these bureaucracies said, you know what? You gave us money to solve a problem. And guess what? We went away, we used the money, we solved the problem, and we no longer need any more money. Thank you very much. It's never happened. You know what they say? They say, we took the money, and now the problem's 10 times bigger. You need to increase our budget tenfold. That's what they say. So as this problem worsens in British Columbia, the public health bureaucrats who caused and exacerbate the problem get bigger and more powerful every single day, and so do the corrupt companies that supply these unsafe opioids into the system. So here's what I'm going to do. I will shut the drug dens. There will be no more of these injection sites. I will cut off the taxpayer-subsidized opioids. I will put the money into treatment and recovery services. We will give hope to the people. If you're out there suffering from addiction, know that there is a better day and a better way ahead for you. We know this can be done. We will detox. We will provide counseling, group therapy, physical exercise, yoga, sweat lodges for First Nations, transitional housing. We'll get people back on their feet, reconnect them with their families, give them a chance to cleanse their bodies of their poisons, redeem their souls, and have a bright and optimistic future. And I said there'd be a dollar-for-dollar law. How will we pay for it? We will sue those corrupt pharmaceutical companies and recover the money. We'll bring our loved ones home drug-free, and we will restore our freedom in this country. We will repeal the censorship laws, C-11 and C-63. There will be no mandatory digital IDs. We will ban all of our ministers and MPs from any involvement in the World Economic Forum. We will cut foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies and bring that money home. And we will put that money into rebuilding our military to keep our country strong and free. We'll support our veterans We'll expand the reserves. Our young reservists will gain skills not just in defending the nation, but in the trades, in AI, in cybersecurity, so that they can take those skills from helmets to hard hats and earn great livings in the civilian economy later on. And by the way, our military will once again be driven by a warrior ethic, not a woke ethic. You know, normally I don't like to talk about polls, and I won't talk about them for long, but I just noticed recently some of the media have been spinning their heads about why it is that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are leading among young people. They find it so bizarre. They say, you know, aren't young people supposed to follow this script that they're force-fed in their universities and in school and by the media elites, that, you know, you never have to grow up, you'll get a basic income from the government, everything will be free, that this was the utopian ideology they've been pushing. And they've tried to censor anybody on our campuses who disagreed. They tried to censor Jordan Peterson, the great Jordan Peterson. And what they found is that young people actually are not buying what they're selling. Because what youth have started to realize is that look at these wonderful young people here, very smart. They came here right in the front row, top of the class. You know what our young people understand is that a government that is big enough to give you everything you want will be strong enough to take everything you have. Isn't that true? And that's what it's all about, demobilizing and tranquilizing the population, taking away initiative and ambition, and then saying you'll never be able to survive without the state and those who run it, making everybody permanently and hopelessly dependent. You see, help is the sunny side of control with this government. And our young people want, as great Jordan Peterson actually said, they want to pursue the adventure of their life. That adventure is going out into the world and harvesting a living, bringing it back and building a home, starting a family and having kids. That was the spirit that allowed our Indigenous people to survive here from time immemorial, to go out into the wilderness and hunt and feed their communities. The explorers, like David Thompson, the Doukhobors who arrived here in this region, they did an adventure. The adventure of trying something that was difficult. And you know, even if in some magical way it could have been easy for them, they would not have been better off for it to be easy. Because easy street leads to a dead end. And the hardest roads lead to the best destinations. Our people are not just crying out for food and homes. They want to take back control of their lives. They want to be actors in their own play. They want to be the primary characters, not just the stand-asides with one man taking the stage. They want to put themselves back in front, in charge of the country they love, so that they can ensure that it lives up to the incredible legacy that our soldiers, our pioneers, and those who came before us created for all of us. They understand that we must be grateful if we stand in the shade because of those who planted the tree that came before us. These are the traditions. This is the country. The best country in the world, a country where hard work gives you a powerful paycheck and pension that buys affordable food, where anyone from anywhere can do anything. Here in Canada, the freest nation on earth. Let's bring it home. Thank you.
Alrighty, that's going to be the end of that. So yesterday, Parliament held an emergency debate. Now, this isn't the emergency meeting that is going to be happening later today. This is the emergency debate. So I want to listen to a bit of this. This is based on, obviously, the tariffs Trump wants to impose on Canada and Mexico.
This issue that's impacting Canada and all Canadians, coming from the member Winnipeg North, the Liberal caucus. And this is a time that we need to be putting partisanship aside. And I just asked my colleague from the NDP if he would agree to put partisanship aside. Let's work together in what's the best interest to protect Canadian jobs, protect Canadian salaries, and protect our industries here at this point in time.
The honourable member for Windsor West, 25 seconds.
Thank you for that question, and absolutely. And the reason I bring up the Conservative cuts about the CBSA is not to attack, but to bring up the mere fact that we have structurally reduced our empowerment on the border and have to make those jobs up. So if we can find solutions that unite on this, we need to do them. And first of all, to stop hurting ourselves and our capabilities to actually fight back against unfair allegations from Donald Trump.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Edmonton, Brisbane.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my honourable colleague from Windsor West for starting us off this evening and for his incredibly difficult and hard work in achieving today's debate. New Democrats are concerned, deeply concerned and troubled by the fact that just south of us, Southern Conservatives, American Conservatives are yet again attacking Canadian industry. But, Madam Speaker, this person, Mr. Donald Trump, is someone that Canadians know all too well. He's like a scary movie. We've seen this scary movie before. He was president once already. And in any good scary film that you watch a second time, you know just when the scary scenes are. And you know when to close your eyes. Madam Speaker, we knew for a long time who Mr. Trump was. We knew for a long time exactly what his intentions were, and we knew for a long time just how he thought about Canadians. He takes us for granted. He kicks us when it's convenient. And most unfortunately, Liberals and Conservatives always bow down to him. That's right. That's the problem we're facing today, Madam Speaker. Consecutive Liberal and Conservative governments have always been at the whim of America, have always been at the whim of their demands. We need a kind of Canada that demonstrates to our workers, that demonstrates to our industries that we care and value their tremendous support. So much so that we would invest in them. The member from Windsor West made very clear that the very serious issues at the border were man-made. They're made by the Liberals and the Conservatives. The Conservatives cut over 1,000 CBSA workers. Shameful. And yet today they're the ones coming to this place saying, now we need to be nonpartisan after they already messed it up.
That's right.
Broke the system. The Liberals inherited that system, and guess what? They found it convenient to just keep many of those aspects. Canada, as a matter of fact, didn't have this immense trade deficit with the United States. Actually, we don't have a trade deficit, but it's just not going to the right people. It's going to billionaires on Bay Street. That's right. It's going to billionaires on Wall Street. And Canadians are always left behind. We have some of the best labor and skills across the globe. My province of Alberta has the best labor right across this country. Skilled laborers that are doing the hard work every single day, and they know that when they're drilling in our oil sector, for example, our energy sector, they know that that's a tough job. They send all of that product we develop over to the United States, and then we import the developed product, gasoline, and guess what? We pay more for it because of it. That's right. For a long time, Albertans have always told me, I've knocked on doors, and they say, why is it that we can't produce these goods right here in Canada? Why can't we produce the things that make Canada great here, right here at home? New Democrats, we're the only ones, Madam Speaker, New Democrats are the only ones that will stand by our tremendous labor here in Canada. We know their value. We're going to support them in their jobs. And we're going to make sure that Mr. Trump knows exactly who he's messing with. Canada accounts for a tremendous amount of trade into the United States, so much so that they rely on us. That means Americans are going to have to start paying a lot more for the goods that we here in Canada make. Things like the products that go into homes. Guess what it means for the American family that want to buy a home today? It means Donald Trump is prepared to increase the cost of your home. Increase the cost of your home. Groceries, ready to increase that too. Gasoline. Every single good, Donald Trump is prepared to make Americans pay. And guess what? Canada, we have an opportunity here. We are an immensely courageous country, but we're also a country that belongs to a globe that needs Canada. We know that. Canadian goods, Canadian services, Canadian jobs, Canadian products can go elsewhere. We need to show the United States, we need to show Donald Trump that our industries are not just the best industries and produce the best quality, but they're also desired elsewhere. They're desired in Europe, they're desired in Asia, they're desired in Australia, they're desired in New Zealand, they're desired right across this globe. Canadian-made products are the best products in the world.
And yet most of them are coming and sold from China. Yeah, I don't know about that, buddy.
So desperately.
All right, guys,
Want
I
to
got a
see
little
Canadian
bit of wiggle
trading.
room here.
However,
We can
I'm
kind
a very
of do a little bit of
I'm
skipping
telling
ahead
you.
here. I know nobody
Be a
really
little
wants
bit
to
of
listen to
focus
the
on the
NDP
matter.
because
That's
all this guy really
fair.
does is blow a bunch of hot air. And that's really all the NDP ever does, is just lie and manipulate. And they've been doing it for years now. Oh, no. Kevin's really not any better, though, is he?
That's one of the reasons why we were very anxious, along with Ukraine, to actually have a Canada-Ukraine trade agreement, something that was very widely respected and applauded both in Canada and in Ukraine, as both countries benefited, with the exception of the Conservatives, of course. But there's also more that potential that's out there. I, for one, for example, would like to see more trade relations with Canada and Philippines, an area in which in early December we are going to be spending more time. And I'm wondering if the member can just pick up on the importance of diversity and Canada diversifying its trading opportunities, because we are very much a trading nation.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Grisba.
Canada's economy is one that's been largely organized over the past 150 years as a raw extract exporter. What that means is we take raw material like a log or a rail or oil, and we export that raw material. We don't have any value-added mechanism for Canadian products. We need to do that here. That's the first step. We need to make sure that our products are not only more competitive and more innovative across the globe, but we also need to then work, as the member suggests, in making certain that those products have a home to go to. Ukraine, they need Canadian products. The Philippines, they need Canadian products. We have a market on the globe right now that is so desperate for Canadian innovation and our Canadian products that it baffles me that we would be so concerned right now with the fact that the United States is doing this tariff, which is why I'm so confident to those who are scared about this issue that we will, in fact, fight back and will protect our industries while also diversifying our economy.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Saanich Falls.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for Edmonton Griesbach for pointing out that our economic planning in Canada has been to ignore Canadian jobs in order to have a rip and strip economy where raw resources are pulled out and shipped overseas without additional value added providing jobs for Canadian workers, such as with raw logs, raw bitumen, and so on. And I want to ask my honourable colleague if he looked at the literature. Canada is always plagued by falling behind in productivity, and productivity as a measurement improves whenever the ratio of goods that have received value-added manufactured goods grows in relation to the export of raw unprocessed goods. And I ask if he wouldn't agree with me that it's time Canada actually paid attention to jobs for Canadian workers and not shipping out more trees, more fish, more bitumen without the processing that brings growth and productivity to our economy.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Grisba.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague from Saanich Gulf Islands for her wisdom and albeit her history. She often shares in this place unique history that all of us as members could benefit from. One of the history points she's mentioning here is the fact that we have an economy that's largely been a rip and extract economy that just exports that raw product elsewhere. We need to have an industrial strategy. It's the 21st century. We have dinosaur parties in here that keep thinking that they're the Hudson's Bay Company, that they can just keep extracting whatever they want and keep selling whatever they want to anybody with no value added. You know who that doesn't help? That doesn't help workers. When they have the skills, when they have the access to the immense technology.
It's so funny listening to the NDP speak because they truly believe that they'll help Canadians and that they're there for Canadians, but time and time again, they just sit there and back the Liberals over and over again, and they have been for years now. And Jagmeet is still waiting for his pension. He could have called a vote of non-confidence, but we're still waiting for him to do so, and he won't. The Bloc aren't any better at the end of the day. I'm going to skip forward a bit here. Let's do a little skip here. This Pierre Poilievre on the U.S. tariffs.
Countries is so interconnected that we have 35 major electrical transmission lines and 70 oil and gas pipelines across the border. Canada provides 40% of U.S. crude imports, making it America's largest foreign energy supplier, something that President Trump should care about if he intends to keep his promise to cut gas prices in half. He is going to need our oil and our energy in order to do that. And we're going to need continued access to the American economy if we are to succeed. We trade more with the United States than we do, actually twice as much with the United States than we do with the rest of the world combined.
There are dreams of replacing the U.S. with another country or other countries. We've been talking about this since the first Trudeau, that we would be doing business with a lot of other countries elsewhere, but this has never happened. In fact, the weight of the U.S. economy has grown. Its percentage of global GDP is on the rise. All forecasts of China outstripping the U.S. did not take place. And actually, the gap between China and the U.S. has widened because of the fact that China decided to go back to socialist and centralizing policies planned by a government, which slowed down their economic growth because U.S. capitalism continued to produce wealth. That's the reality. Even if others have ideological objections, there is no other economic power in the world that is stronger than American capitalism. That's just the way it is. But this capitalism doesn't work without international trade, and especially with countries, allied countries like Canada. And Canada is the best ally of the U.S. in the world. And that is why we have to protect this relationship. We need a plan for our economy and for our security.
Be honest, we enter this crisis in a state of weakness. We have a weakened economy, a weakened military, and most of all, a weakened Prime Minister. Weakened, and that weakness, I think, may have been one of the reasons why President Trump believed that he could go ahead and make these threats and trample all over our Prime Minister again. Mr. Speaker, here is the sad reality. Our GDP per capita is smaller than it was 10 years ago, even while the American economy per capita has grown by 18%. Our per capita GDP fell more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. We're one of the only countries that has not recovered its economy since before COVID happened. In reality, our housing costs have doubled, our national debt has doubled, food bank use have all doubled in the last 4 years. All of this before the threat of these tariffs. Before the threat of these tariffs, food prices had increased 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. Before the threat of these tariffs, our national debt had grown by over 100% in a decade. Before the threat of these tariffs, $500 billion USD more Canadian investment went south than came back. That's Canadian investment dollars building American mines, factories, pipelines, paying American, not Canadian, wages. And on top of that, the threats that we heard last night should have come as no surprise. Yet, for some reason, they did surprise the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. It was only 20 days ago that the Finance Minister said, Canada will be fine. Nothing to worry about. Well, they should have seen this coming a mile away. President Trump had been saying that he would do this. He was elected 3 weeks ago. You'd think the Prime Minister would have been furiously planning, preparing, meeting with the premiers and talking about a counter plan during that time. And now we learn that since the threat happened, he's come up with exactly one response: a Zoom call. He's going to hold a Zoom call tomorrow. Of course, the media is absolutely captivated by this development. There's going to be a Zoom call between 11 or 12 politicians, and somehow this is going to solve the problem. We need a real plan, real action that will defend our economy and our security, and most of all, to put Canada first.
We need a real plan to put Canada first and a plan for our economy and security.
Mr. Speaker, the debate is over. There can be no tax increases. The tax increases the Prime Minister proposed on work, investment, energy were irresponsible and destructive all along. But now they're economic suicide. Think about the impact that a 61-cent a litre carbon tax would have when the tax is zero south of the border. President Trump has made it clear he wants our jobs and our businesses. You can only imagine his economic development teams calling trucking companies, factories, forestry enterprises, saying, hey, you're facing a 61-cent a litre carbon tax north of the border. Drive 50 kilometers south and we have zero carbon tax. By the way, business and personal taxes are already much lower and will drop further. There will be a powerful sucking sound of jobs, businesses, and money leaving our country to enrich the United States. This is like a tariff imposed by our own government on our own economy, compounded with a real tariff from the United States of America, that this would cripple our economy. So we are calling for the Prime Minister to announce today that he will cancel all tax increases on energy, on work, on businesses. Let's give our people a fighting chance to save their jobs. Secondly, Canadian energy is not the enemy. Our energy sector is our #1 net export. Yet the Prime Minister has made it explicit that he wants to phase out that sector. He has blocked 2 pipelines, he blocked the Tech Frontier mine, and he has prevented us from building a single solitary LNG liquefaction plant, which, by the way, would have allowed us to ship our natural gas to countries other than the United States of America. Right now, because the Prime Minister has blocked LNG liquefaction on both coasts, we're stuck giving every single cubic foot of LNG we export to the Americans on their terms so that they can liquefy it, they can upgrade it, and they can turn it into a profit, something that to which, presumably, the 25% tariff would apply. We need to end this madness. First of all, we must announce here and now the cancellation of the production cut for the Canadian oil and gas sector.
We have to announce today that we are quickly going to approve LNG liquefaction plants for export overseas, not just to the U.S., so we can move coal and reduce GHGs globally and skirt monopolistic control from the U.S. with respect to our natural gas.
Liquefaction plants take advantage of the half as long shipping distances to both Asia and Europe compared to the Americans. We should go around the Americans and send our gas to displace dirty dictator energy, to reduce coal fire burning, to use our clean Canadian hydro to liquefy it, to send it off to Europe and break European dependence on Putin, to turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. Next, we have to rebuild our military. It is now clear.
We have to rebuild our military. It's clear. There is a link between defense and the economy. Our allies, particularly the Americans, expect us to be capable of defending our continent with them and tackle the true threats to our security.
Military, it is severely weakened after 9 years of this president. Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, in 2023, Canada spent more money on consultants and professional services than we did on our Army, Navy, and Air Force combined. The Army spent $34 million on new sleeping bags that aren't even suitable for Canadian winters. Half of military vehicles aren't fit to deploy. We've run out of ammunition, 155mm artillery shells, with no plans to reload. While the Prime Minister spends millions on Liberal-linked green companies, he's not able to provide the necessary shells and ammo to fire on a potential future enemy. The Liberal government has now announced it will cut a further $1 billion from the budget. Canadian troops in Latvia had to buy their own helmets, rain gear, and vests. Canadian troops in Poland are not being reimbursed for their meals. D&D is hiking rents on soldiers even as they struggle to retain and recruit members. The military is short 16,500 servicemen and women, but only recruited 4,000 last year, a total of 4,000 all of last year. Weird, woke, wasteful obsessions undermined our military and drive down recruitment. The reason why the Canadian military cannot recruit is because young men and women do not want anything to do with the divisive identity politics that's being imposed on the forces by this government. And rather than fixing this problem, the minister in question is more worried about banning a Navy marching song that is not politically correct. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, this woke agenda is dividing and distracting people from our work. Young women and men don't want to have anything to do with this woke agenda. They want to fight for our country. They want to be proud of the Canadian flag. We are going to eliminate this woke agenda and recruit proud young Canadians to support our armed forces.
We will have a warrior culture, not a woke culture. Now, we know this is all going to cost money, and that's going to be difficult because we will inherit a dumpster fire of a budget. We know that Canada's families are the most indebted in the G7. The national debt has doubled in size, and the Prime Minister's spending is still out of control. He's added more debt than the 22 prior Prime Ministers combined and keeps piling it on. That said, and by the way, his big priority now is to take GST off potato chips. Can you imagine that being your economic priority in the current environment we're in today? Mr. Speaker, we have a real plan, and a plan that we will build out between now and the next election. A common-sense plan that will cut back on foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies, eliminate useless back-office bureaucracies, and procurement boondoggles, and redirect all of those billions in savings to rebuilding our forces. And this is how we will do it. We will expand our presence in the north to keep Beijing and the Russians out. We will secure the continent against attacks and threats. The world's best cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, optical and drone technology. We will expand the reserves and make sure they are trained for both the military and the civilian economy so that they are ready to be called on, God forbid, in the event of war. We will get more bang for our buck, as we proved that we could do under the previous Conservative government. Yes, we had a lean, mean fighting machine. Yes, we were efficient. But under the previous Conservative government, with that efficient spending, we were able to buy 5 Globemasters, massive strategic airlift, the Hercules aircraft, 17
Hercules aircraft, the Chinook helicopters, the Leopard 2 tanks, the refurbishment of our refueling vessels. The list goes on. And by the way, we were able to help our American friends destroy ISIS and Al-Qaeda. At that time, they had no concerns about us carrying our weight because we were punching above our weight, which protected our security and our economy. And then there's the border. We need to re-secure our border as part of this plan, Mr. Speaker. CBS reported, and I quote, that the Department of Justice charged Mohammed Khan, a 20-year-old Pakistani citizen living in Canada, with plotting to conduct an ISIS-inspired attack on the New York Jewish Center. Mr. Speaker, Khan was arrested in Armstrong in Quebec, Canada, just 12 miles from the U.S. This is on top of another ISIS fighter who came into Canada, got citizenship after allegedly being videotaped cutting up a human body on a crucifix in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, we have to screen people coming into our country. We have to identify threats and interrupt them before they harm us or our allies. There are 4.9 million permits and visas for people that will, in Canada today, who are not citizens or permanent residents, that will run out in December of next year. Many of them are great people, but when their permits run out and they're not renewed, they must leave. We need a plan from the government on how they're going to get these millions of people to go back to their home country, not be tempted by a stronger U.S. economy to cross into the U.S., thus threatening the security of the border and turning the Americans against us. We must crack down on drugs. We must scan the shipping containers, get our people into treatment and recovery to bring them home drug-free, not to please Donald Trump, but to prevent more tragic deaths of our people. In other words, we need all of this to say that we need to put our country and our people first. As Laurier would have said, le Canada d'abord, le Canada.
Canada first, Canada above all, Canada always.
Great motto must be Canada first, Canada last, Canada always.
That was quite the speech from Pierre. Wow. He just laid it all out on the line for us.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, one could easily talk about how that leader of the Conservative Party, while a member of Cabinet, had the lowest percentage GDP on defense spending. But that's only one relatively minor, but a significant point that I would say to the leader of the Conservative Party. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister, in 10 minutes, talked about a Team Canada approach, talked about the stakeholders. And let me remind individuals that are following the debate, Donald Trump in this issue is a very serious issue for Canada. We have the experience. We've demonstrated that. When the negotiations got tough last go-around, the Conservative Party, with this leader, capitulated and said, no, just make a deal. We said that we are going to make a deal that's in the best interest of Canadians. Now he wants to flip-flop. Why should Canadians have any trust with this leader on the trade negotiations with the United States, given its importance?
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
First of all, I note that the Prime Minister was not courageous to come and debate me here directly on this today. He should be here in this House debating the future.
He's not wrong. Where's Trudeau? He's not wrong.
There is no point of orders this evening. We're on autopilot. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition, just to remind that we can't say.
Whoa.
I'll wait until the Honourable Member is done. Is the Honourable Member done? Thank you. Just a reminder to the Leader that we can't say whether someone's here or not. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in the last round of negotiations, we remember what happened. The Prime Minister capitulated. He capitulated. So here's what happened.
Prime Minister did not get us an exemption to Buy America, as the earlier Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, had successfully done. Not only is Buy America still in place, it now applies to all levels of U.S. government procurement, which it never did before. Prime Minister did not get us out of the softwood lumber tariffs the way the earlier leader, Stephen Harper, had. Harper secured a reimbursement of the softwood lumber tariffs and an end to the tariffs for 10 years. They were reimposed under this Prime Minister and have been doubled by President Biden. This Prime Minister has had 9 years and 3 presidents, and he wasn't able to fix what Prime Minister Harper did in about 3 months. And then the Americans and Mexicans signed the USMCA. They walked it over to this Prime Minister and said, take it or leave it. And guess what? He took it, and now we're all taking it.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I don't believe you can govern a country like an advertising firm. This doesn't help to solve important issues. Saying Canada first, triple this, axe the tax, that has never worked. What I've heard from the leader of the official opposition are empty slogans. Now I'm going to give him a chance. Could he tell us what his plan is?
Qu'est-ce que j'ai entendu là? Okay. No dilatory motion, so I apologize for that last. So I guess we can do points of order because I didn't hear what happened there. J'ai pas entendu.
I didn't hear what happened. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse. My colleague for Jonquière called one of our colleagues an imbecile. Not acceptable. We do not accept it. Zero tolerance for that sort of thing.
L'honorable député de Jonquière.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, I was being heckled as I was asking my question. I withdraw the word that I used, but I would recommend all Conservative members to apply what we've just heard. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. Mr. Speaker, at least the Blockiste member has spoken for once. It's been months that the government has threatened his region with a decree against the forestry sector. And we heard nothing from this member. The 2 Bloc members who live in that particular region have done nothing, zero. Some Bloc members have supported the federal government coming up with this order that hurts their region. The member should defend all workers across this region. I will cancel that order, and I will work for softwood lumber workers because the Bloc does nothing.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that was critical to this discussion tonight and what we highlighted in the request to have this debate was that Donald Trump questioned the Canadian border in particular. In fact, his 25% tariff is tied directly to his argument that he makes that crime and drugs are coming across the northern border, similar to the southern border, and that is the reason for the tariff. So as New Democrats, we have proposed to continue to train more officers under the CBSA as they are short 2,000 to 3,000 officers at this moment, expand their powers that could have been done since 1932 to actually allow them to do more type of work that's consistent with the RCMP. And as well, Mr. Speaker, we want to make sure that the training of the officers can be done as they go back to their regions to enhance the application process. But I do want to ask a specific question because it's important. In this last part,
I'll let the honourable member finish up his question. J'ai un appel au règlement.
I have a point of order, the honourable member. Well, on several times, it's difficult for francophones in this House. It's hard for us to follow the interpretation when there is all this noise and heckling, when they're singing YMCA in the House. So when there's this level of noise, it's difficult for us. So I would ask that you remind members, out of respect for interpretation.
This is why the block sucks.
That.
To keep the noise down so that we can get through the questions and comments section of this, I'll allow the honourable member from Windsor West to finish up his question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And another practical element is opening up new training facilities as well for our CBSA officers. But going directly to a matter that's very important in terms of this Parliament already had the Conservatives voting against a supplementary budget of $26 million to our CBSA officers. And then on top of that, the member from Carleton was part of a cabinet that cut $120 million from CBSA and laid off 1,100 officers and also reduced the capabilities for them to work with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies in the United States and their border patrols, directly responsible from the cuts. So does the member from Carleton now wish to apologize for axing those workers and axing the officers that defend our border that are now putting our situation of trade in jeopardy with Donald J. Trump?
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
No, Mr. Speaker, because in fact we increased frontline CBSA officers and we actually armed them. And furthermore, what we spent less money on was back office bureaucracy and consultants. Now, this member is busy bragging that he voted for a more expensive CBSA. Yes, it went to consultants. The money did not go to boots on the ground.
You're just coming in right now. We are about to be heading into question period. Very soon we will see Pierre and Trudeau debate this U.S. tariff issue live in about 5 minutes. So don't go anywhere. The music you're hearing from time to time is the stream for question period.
They went to tens of millions of
it's
dollars
briefly cutting in and out.
Back office bureaucrats and high-priced consultants that increase the burden on taxpayers without increasing the security at the border. And that is the fundamental difference. We delivered more border security at a lower price. The fact that it costed less for us to secure the border is actually a plus. The NDP doesn't understand. When you actually deliver a better result at a lower price to taxpayers, that is a good thing, and you'll get more of it when I'm Prime Minister.
I just want to underline, I did hear a lot of comments in the background. We just asked for people to be quiet, and I did hear the honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby trying to comment all along that. If you want to ask questions, I'm sure you would stand and ask questions. So questions and comments, question commentaire, the honourable member for Bay of Quinte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And something else incredible happened after the failed negotiations of CUSMA. Canada was USA's #1 trading partner for goods. It's now #3. Mexico is #1. And it's amazing it happened because Canada was kicked to the sidelines during those negotiations. And we all know the rest of the story. The average American worker now makes $22,000 more than the Canadian. $500 billion have sucked down to the U.S. So my question to the future Prime Minister of Canada is, can he tell this House how he will stand up for Canadian workers, their paychecks, and our security?
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we need a bring-it-home tax cut. The reality is that rising taxes, increasing delays to approve massive projects has driven $500 billion of investment south of the border. So we've gone from 10 years ago, the New York Times printing a headline that says, "Welcome to Canada, home of the world's most affluent middle class," an article in which it quoted that Canada's median income was equal to that of the United States, to the present state where the American per capita income is $22,000 higher than ours.
the worst gap in a century. Now, this is directly a result of high taxes and heavy burdens on our economy. We will reform and cut taxes with the goal of bringing home production and paychecks to our workers. In other words, let's put Canada first.
Resuming debate.
All right, question period has begun. We're doing some statements by members.
This time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Typically, statements by members are whatever they would like to bring up before question period begins, so you're probably going to hear some completely unrelated stuff to what is going on.
Around the world, Bella Brave. Bella had a big personality and an even bigger TikTok following of 7 million people, where she would brighten your day with videos of her dancing, singing, and short music video collabs with her mom and even the Calgary Flames. Bella had to overcome many obstacles in her life. She was born without an immune system. She was a frequent visitor to the children's hospitals in both Saskatoon and Toronto and underwent a bowel transplant in 2023. She had every right to complain, but instead, she chose to use her life experience and platform to encourage other kids going through tough times and to spread the overflowing joy that she possessed. Having received an organ transplant, she was a strong advocate for signing up to be an organ donor and for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, to name a few. I want to leave you with the words of her mother, Kyla, after Bella passed away. Bella would want you to remember, God is love, be brave, and you're never too old to bring a stuffy.
The honourable member from Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, cancer is a reality that will affect 2 in 5 Canadians, including my mother. Early detection is the key in the fight against this disease. There's many organizations who are working hard to support all the cancer patients, but the organizations like Cancer Warriors are at the forefront of supporting and empowering cancer patients. Last Friday, I was grateful to attend the 7th annual awareness and fundraising gala organized by Cancer Warrior founder Navneet Sharma, along with the board members Sita Mohan, Nisang, Indu, and Akshay. The event featured a survivor walk where 15 brave survivors showcased outfits designed by Dinesh K. Ramsey. This walk aimed to break the stigma associated with the cancer diagnosis. By raising awareness, offering hope, and empowering those affected, we can all contribute to saving lives. The work of Cancer Warriors exemplifies how collective efforts can make a major impact. Let us all be inspired and support the vital cause.
You're here.
L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, Le Pavois is celebrating its 35th anniversary. This organization was founded in Limoilou. Its goal is the social, professional, and educational integration of people living with mental health challenges. It offers support to enhance their quality of life through 3 social economy enterprises. At the heart of this organization, many women have distinguished themselves over the years. First, founder Vesta W. Jobidon, the first woman to believe in the organization. Then Lisette Boivin, who was the first CEO from 1989 to 2015. Today, Le Pavois is headed by Francine Cyr, a dedicated woman who always cares about the well-being of members. Thanks to these remarkable women, our community can count on a reliable and recognized mental health resource. To all those who've worked with us over the past 35 years, thank you for your extraordinary work. The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize an outstanding person from my community of Vaudreuil-Soulanges, Mr. Daniel Bissonnette. Mr. Bissonnette has been at the heart of the Musée Régional de Vaudreuil-Soulanges since 1981, including a remarkable 38-year period as CEO. Under his visionary leadership, the museum has grown not only in size, but also in reputation to become one of Quebec's most respected historical institutions. For over 40 years, Mr. Bissonnette has worked tirelessly to preserve and share our region's rich heritage. As Mr. Bissonnette prepares to enjoy a well-deserved retirement this December, I'd like to thank him for his significant contribution to the culture of Vaudreuil-Soulanges and of Quebec as a whole. Thank you, Daniel, for all you've done. On behalf of all those you've touched, we wish you a happy retirement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to pay tribute to the Mayor of the Township of Perth South, Jim Aitchison, following his sudden passing last week. Jim was dedicated to his family and his community. He was a proud life member of the Downey Optimist Club, and in politics, he was first elected as a Downey Ward councillor and would go on to serve as Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and 3 terms as Warden of Perth County. Jim served as Warden during some of the most challenging times the county has faced. Under Jim's leadership, significant efforts were made to improve mental health supports for first responders and the communities they serve. Jim was a no-nonsense type of leader, and while some of his advice may have used language that would not be considered parliamentary, you always knew where you stood with Jim. To his wife Lori and their kids Kelly, Tracy, and Greg, I know that you are as proud of him as he was proud of you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, I am honoured to welcome to Ottawa Mr. Jaspal Singh Manjpur, a human rights defender from Punjab. A distinguished lawyer, Mr. Manjpur has dedicated his career to defending religious minorities and others facing systemic discrimination. He has litigated landmark cases that now guide legal teams across the subcontinent in securing fundamental rights. As counsel for many political prisoners, he advocates for freedom of expression and dissent. Beyond the courtroom, he advocates for policy reform and has authored many reports on human rights in India. Guided by Sikh principle of Sarvatada Pala, the welfare of all, Mr. Manjpur exemplifies the fight for justice, dignity, and human rights. I urge all members to join me in thanking him for his service.
All right, we're getting through statements by members. We are almost done. Question period will begin literally any minute now. The House of Commons is filling up. I believe, my prediction, this is going to be a very heated question period based off of everything that is going on in the US. The Montreal riots and protests or whatever that just happened as well. Trudeau got annihilated for it, and him showing up again today, I can only assume he's going to get called out for it again, as he attended a Taylor Swift concert over actually paying attention to what was going on around him. All of this stuff is collapsing and happening as the Liberal government is failing. Liberal MPs want Trudeau to resign. They continue to push for it. And I don't know, it seems like it's just a big circus right now. But I do believe this question period is going to be a heated one. Let's get into it.
Thank the team and volunteers at Feed Scarborough for their commitment to addressing food insecurity in Scarborough, and I encourage all who can to support their local food banks. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary Shepherd.
Government documents show about 1.1 million temporary resident visas will expire by the end of next year. Yet when asked at committee how his department will ensure these individuals leave once their visas expire, the immigration minister had no plan. After 9 years of mismanagement, the minister's only solution is to hope people leave voluntarily. At committee, he deflected, offering vague answers about monitoring and partner organizations. Canadians deserve better than a minister who cannot explain how his own department enforces immigration rules. We need a Canada First plan that will fix the immigration system they broke. Canada needs a serious, enforceable immigration plan that protects our system's integrity. The Prime Minister's YouTube videos and bogus claims on immigration only create more chaos, mismanagement, and uncertainty. The PM claimed in the same YouTube fantasy video that immigration would balance out. Speaker, immigration will balance itself? Who is he kidding? Only common sense conservatives will fix this broken liberal immigration system.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to start first to wish my granddaughter a happy 15th birthday. Canadians have faced
Okay, come on. Let's get into question period here. These statements by members are starting to get a little ridiculous.
Sure. Just last week, the Prime Minister made it clear we're stepping up big at this time of the year. Starting December the 14th, here's the decree. Many daily goods will be tax-free. Saving like these, where it matters most, gives family a break they can really toast. Yet across the aisle, there's a bitter scene. The Conservatives sulk in a Grinch-like routine. While we deliver joy, they just complain. Stealing holiday hopes is their usual refrain. But Canadians know the Conservative heart are too small to support families struggling, one and all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Speaker, it is National Addictions Awareness Week. Canadians commemorate the countless precious lives lost from the plague of drug use. 47,000 Canadians have died due to drug overdose since 2015, including more than 8,000 last year alone. Every person had dreams, hopes, and aspirations. None of them wanted to become addicted to drugs, and none of them wanted to die. They deserve better. Their families deserve better. All Canadians deserve better than a failing government who thinks the best way to fight overdose crisis is to flood the streets with more drugs. We need to fully reverse the liberalization of drugs, which is killing Canadians and threatening our borders. We need to ban precursor drugs, prosecute every trafficker, and we need to science-based prevention, treatment, and recovery. This madness must stop. A common-sense Conservative government will put an end to this terrible experiment, and we will have a Canada First plan to secure our borders and bring our loved ones home drug-free.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Kenora.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal coalition is alive and well, and Canadians know that they are not worth the cost. Do you remember when the NDP leader made a big stunt about ripping up his deal with the Liberals? Right. He said then, Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. But now, Mr. Speaker, even when Liberal MPs are calling for a new Prime Minister, the NDP leader continues to support this government no matter the cost.
Unbelievable.
He supports the carbon tax, which he has voted to increase over 24 times. He supports inflationary deficits that are driving up the cost of living. He supports soft on-crime policies that have risen violent crime by 50% across the country. And he has said he would fight like hell for Canadian workers, but is nowhere to be seen when we are facing a threat of American tariffs. Mr. Speaker, it is time for a carbon tax election so that Canadians can vote for our Canada First plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Sydney, Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, love Christmas.
I just saw Pierre walk into the building. Justin Trudeau's itinerary did say he will be attending question period today. So like I said, my prediction being it's going to be a crazy one. Everybody is starting to file in. It's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, very soon.
Even Christmas trees. But Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition, he's a mean one, Mr. Grinch, and he doesn't want your Christmas tax break. That is, unless it benefits his wealthy oil and gas donors.
Yeah.
And while Conservatives on the naughty list still refuse to get security checks, on this side of the House, we're making sure Canadians don't have a blue Christmas. Across Canada, we're giving smart policy instead of cheap slogans, bringing joy to children and helping restaurants thrive, all to make sure that it's the most wonderful time of the year. And Mr. Speaker, that's something to sing about.
Look at them. They're so full of themselves. Unreal.
Order, please. Order. The honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, every 6 days, another woman is killed by intimate partner violence. Today is one of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, a call to action to challenge the systems, the laws, and the attitudes that lead to violence against women, girls, and gender-diverse individuals. In Canada, gender-based violence is an epidemic, one that disproportionately impacts Indigenous women, racialized women, migrant women, and members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. On December 6th, I will join the City of Victoria's vigil to honor the 14 women killed in the École Polytechnique massacre, victims of misogynistic violence. But it's not enough to commemorate, it's not enough to pledge, we need concrete action. The government has failed to deliver sustainable funding for shelters, failed to provide affordable housing, failed to implement the calls to justice from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Enough is enough. Everyone deserves to live free from violence.
L'honorable député d'Abitibi.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Today, we celebrate the extraordinary achievement of one of Quebec's most important voices, Pierre Poilievre, who's been inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. On November 11th, he received the Foster Hewitt Award, presented by the NHL Broadcasters Association, to honor a member of the radio and TV industry for his contribution to his profession and to hockey in general. He is, my word, the fourth Francophone to win this award, following in the footsteps of René Lacavalière, Richard Garneau, and Gilles Tremblay. Hockey fans have been treated to Pierre Poilievre's dulcet tones on RDS for 36 years. But Pierre Poilievre doesn't just do hockey, he's also our Formula One commentator and the voice of the Olympics. Mr. Poilievre, thank you for your passion, your respect for the French language, and your careful preparation. Thank you for guiding sports fans through so many battles. Wishing all Quebecers a Stanley Cup with you soon. We want to hear you say it over and over again very soon. He shoots, he scores!
If only they had that same energy when it came to policies and the rest of Canada.
Order. À l'ordre. The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, Canada trades nearly twice as much with the United States as it does all other countries combined. 40% of our economy is tied to that relationship. But this week, President-elect Trump threatened a 25% tariff on all goods. And after 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, we are unprepared for this crisis. The economy is shrinking. Food prices have risen 37% faster here than in the U.S. Canadians now carry the highest household debt in the G7. Canadian housing inflation is the worst it's ever been, and our military is in shambles. We need a Canada First plan. The Prime Minister must cancel his plan to hike carbon tax by 61 cents a litre. He needs to stop his reckless energy cap on what will cut Alberta and Saskatchewan production by 35%. And he must reverse his billion-dollar cut to the military and invest in securing our borders against illegal fentanyl imports and exports. Canada needs leadership. Leadership with the brains and the backbone to stand up to this country, to stand up for Canada. As Laurier said, Canada first, Canada last, Canada always. Let's bring it home.
Order. The Honourable Member from Fleetwood, the Honourable Member for Fleetwood Port Kells.
Mr. Speaker, when someone tells you who they are, it's wise to believe them. When the Leader of the Opposition demonstrates an authoritarian personality, we better pay close attention. Dr. Jennifer Gunter, New York Times women's health columnist, warns that Conservatives have proposed and voted for forced birth legislation 9 times. All have been defeated, but if those come back, and I think he'd let them, we have a Conservative leader who tells us he'd use the notwithstanding clause to override our charter protections. We have a Conservative leader who disregards voices from corporate Canada, but he'll take their money. He says he'll bully cities to ignore voices from our neighbourhoods on property development. He spies on and muzzles his own MPs who Canadians thought they were their voice in Parliament. He, like his mentor Stephen Harper, is a party of one. He treats his own caucus with an iron fist. Would he do the same with the rest of the Canadians? Who knows? But it's best not to give him the chance.
Oral questions.
Yay, here we go. It only took a year and a half.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Canadians are facing the threat of tariffs by the United States. Now, what's the situation here after 9 years with this Prime Minister? Our economy is weak. Our armed forces, our military is weak. Our borders are weak. The Prime Minister himself is weak. When will we finally have an election so that Canadians can choose themselves a strong leader who will protect the economy and put Canada first? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, how ironic. We've given the Conservative Party a chance to put Canadians first, but what do? Well, they vote against initiatives that would help Canadians. They voted against dental care. They vote against the school food program. They voted against more spots in daycare. And they're going to vote against the tax break we're offering Canadians to help them over the next few months. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party leader rises every day to block help for Canadians. He's only thinking about his own interests, not what's best for Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. This Prime Minister is just too weak. He is too weak to protect our economy against Donald Trump's threats. For 3 weeks now, it's been 3 weeks since the President-elect was elected. He's been repeating his threats for weeks. And what's the Prime Minister's plan? A Zoom call. A Zoom call with provincial premiers who feel that this Prime Minister is too weak. Quebec will send the Quebec Provincial Police to protect its borders. Alberta says that this Prime Minister is not defending and standing up for our economy. When will we have an election so that we can get ourselves a strong leader who will protect our economy? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative Party leader is playing petty partisan politics and putting on a show in this House, we are working every day to help Canadians. Members of Parliament represent their constituents here in this place. That's what we're doing on this side. But on the other side, everyone is just helping the Conservative leader rather than constituents. We are helping with school food, with daycare. They're not supporting that. They say that everything is broken, but they're the ones trying to break everything for Canadians. We're here to invest in Canadians. They're here to sow chaos and discord, to break things, to not help Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Face an unprecedented threat from President Trump's potential tariffs. And what is the state of things here in Canada? Our economy is weakened. Our borders are weakened. Our military is weakened. And most of all, our Prime Minister is weakened. Why can't we have a carbon tax election so Canadians can choose a leader with the brains and backbone to protect our economy and put Canada first?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition focuses on himself and on me, we're staying focused on Canadians. We're investing in the kinds of things that are going to help people. We stood up for dental care. We stood up to deliver a school foods program. We're moving forward with more spaces and $10 a day childcare, all things that the Conservative Party voted against. But most recently, Mr. Speaker, they've announced they're going to be voting against the GST break for Canadians over the next couple of months. Something that's going to help people at a time where they need that little extra help. But he doesn't care about helping Canadians. He just wants them to suffer more, so maybe he has a chance.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's lost control of our borders. He's lost control of immigration. He's lost control of spending. And with that erratic performance, we now see that he's lost control of himself. No wonder foreign leaders believe they can walk all over him. They see him as a weak, incompetent leader who does not even have the support of his own party. Yes. Why won't he put the country first for a change, allow a carbon tax election so Canadians can have a Prime Minister who will protect this country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
You can tell he stood up all night against the mirror trying to practice that line. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we've got our sleeves rolled up. We are fighting for for Canadians every single day. We will stand up for good Canadian jobs. We will make sure we continue to have great relations with the United States as we build a stronger future on both sides of the border. We're going to continue to deliver the kinds of things that matter for Canadians. Dental care, free insulin, school food programs, all programs that Conservatives voted against, and now they're going to vote against a GST break for Canadians right across the country for the next few months. That's not being there for Canadians, that's being there for himself.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Just to prove how weak and out of control he's become, he just engaged in a mass hallucination, listing off a bunch of programs that actually don't even exist outside of his own head. But if he's not prepared to stand up for the country when it comes to trade, then why don't we have a real election about taxes? He can run on his tiny 2-month tax trick, and I'll run on my common sense plan to axe the tax and axe the sales tax on new homes. How about a carbon tax election now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We saw it perfectly clearly just now, the fact that he is trying to gaslight Canadians. He just said that the dental care program, to pick one, doesn't even exist. Well, tell that to the 1 million plus Canadians who've gone to see the dentist, many for the first time in years, because of the Canada Dental Care benefit. This is what he's standing against. He's trying to convince Canadians that everything's broken while he forces his MPs to vote against a GST break that's going to help Canadians over the coming months. That's not leadership. That's pandering to the lowest common denominator.
Having good teeth doesn't matter when you can't eat. Over 2 million people are lined up at food banks.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has everyone unanimously against him and his so-called Christmas present. Canadians don't want it, business owners don't want it, retirees don't want it, students don't want it, economists don't want it. Even those who are well off and kind-hearted, they don't want it. No one wants the Prime Minister's Christmas gift. When will the Prime Minister understand that one cannot buy votes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling. That's why we are offering a tax break to all Canadians for the next few months. A tax break at the restaurant, at the grocery store. We know that Canadians are struggling these days. We have one of the best financial situations of all G7 countries, and that means that we're able to help Canadians a little bit. The Bloc might not want that, but that's because the Bloc Québécois, Mr. Speaker, all they want is to pick fights and squabbles. They don't want the government to truly help Canadians and Quebecers, but despite them in their opposition, that's exactly what we're going to do.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, Canadians who are struggling are those who will not receive a rebate check. You know who is struggling, Mr. Speaker? The Liberals themselves. The Conservatives don't seem to support the proposal. The NDP neither. The Bloc Québécois neither. No one in this House seems to support the rebate check. If the Prime Minister is so sure of himself, why doesn't he make it a matter of confidence and have a confidence vote?
The Bloc, as usual. All bark, no bite.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. It's clear, Mr. Speaker, that opposition parties want a political excuse to vote against something that Canadians do want. Canadians need a tax break. That's exactly what we are giving them. It will be up to opposition parties to decide whether they want to be there for their constituents, to be there for Canadians who are struggling, or if they prefer playing petty partisan politics and picking fights. The Bloc and the Conservatives want to say that Canada's broken, but we on this side are here for Canadians to support them and to help them when times are tough. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Monsieur le Président, trouvez l'erreur.
Mr. Speaker, tell me what's wrong with this picture. On the one hand, we have Danielle, who is retired for medical reasons. Her disability income is $45,000 a year. On the other hand, we have her spouse, who earns $125,000 a year. Who's going to receive a $250 check in the spring? Yes, that's right. According to the Liberals, her spouse should receive a check, but not Danielle herself. She's being punished because she's too sick to work. That makes no sense whatsoever. My question to the Prime Minister is simple. What does he have to say to Danielle and to all retirees? I would like to say to all members to please be very careful in their choice of words. They should pick words that are accepted. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I've been in this house for long enough, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, you have. It's time to go.
Remember a time when the NDP stood up for Canada's workers. In fact, they were the party of workers in Canada. Now, workers who have been shouldering a heavy burden throughout the pandemic, throughout the inflation crisis, they have done so much and we have supported them. We're also supporting seniors and young people. But with this measure, with this rebate, we want to acknowledge the hard work of workers who need our support. The NDP is against it. The party that truly...
Yes, Darth Fungus.
It's the government.
Member for Cowichan and Malahat Langford.
Like most Canadians, seniors are doing what they can to get by, but things are tough. The Liberals have let people down, watching as seniors struggle to even buy their groceries. The Liberals' latest disappointment, cutting seniors out of their $250 rebate. Meanwhile, the Conservatives rub elbows with the same grocery CEOs who are jacking up costs. Will the Prime Minister listen and give seniors a much-needed break? I mean, come on, even his own MPs are asking for him to fix this.
Yeah, fix it! The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I remember when the party of Tommy Douglas, of Ed Broadbent, of Jack Layton was actually a party that stood up for workers. But now that we have a government that is recognizing that workers carried us through this pandemic, the Canadian workers saw us through one of the worst global inflation crises the world has ever seen, and that we want to give them support because we know things are tough for workers, not to take away anything from the help we're giving seniors or youth. We want to be there for workers, and the NDP is suddenly against benefits for workers. It makes no sense, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
No sense, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't agree more. Here we have the NDP claiming to have torn up their deal, their carbon tax coalition, with the Prime Minister. But then they taped it back together when he promised a 2-month tax trick. Then, after taking credit for it, the NDP says they didn't know what was in it. Right. And now they're opposed to it. Mr. Speaker, these two leaders can't even figure out how to give away $6 billion properly. Isn't it time for a carbon tax election so that we can elect a common sense government?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, MPs are supposed to represent their constituents here in Ottawa, but the Conservative Party MPs are choosing to represent their leader back in their constituency. I know Canadians across the country, including in Conservative ridings, are looking forward to paying no taxes on meals in restaurants or on all groceries or on kids' clothes for the next few months. But the leader is making them vote against these measures to help Canadians. If Conservative MPs want to stand up for Canadians, they need to stand up against their leader.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians are ready to stand up and speak for themselves. The Prime Minister wants to lecture us about democracy. Then why don't we have a referendum? A referendum election where the choice will be the following. A tiny 2-month tax trick with the NDP Liberals, or a permanent axing of the carbon tax and axing the sales tax on new homes. Why not let Canadians decide now?
Trudeau acts like slapping a piece of duct tape on a falling building will stop the building from falling.
Speaker, for the Leader of the Opposition to end the price on pollution would mean to end the Canada carbon rebate that comes to people's homes 4 times a year and delivers more money to middle-class Canadians than the price on pollution actually costs, while at the same time decreasing emissions. And in regards to housing, his failed housing proposal was to cut billions of dollars from cities across this country that they're investing in building housing. That would drive up property taxes for homeowners. That would make it harder to build homes. He has a proposal that is electorally interesting for him, but won't do anything for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Electorally interesting. That's his condescending way of saying Canadians actually like my plan. Because Canadians have figured out that after 9 years of this weak Prime Minister, spending $80 billion on housing, with the result being the doubling of housing costs, that spending billions more won't make any difference. We're going to slash that bureaucracy and use the savings to axe the sales tax on Canadian homes. Why won't he let Canadians decide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mayors from Kelowna, Abbotsford, Ucluelet, all in Conservative ridings across the country are speaking up that the investments we're making in the housing accelerator is helping them cut red tape, increase densification, create more homes more quickly. And the plan the Conservative Party has put forward to remove those billions of dollars from municipalities just as they're tackling the housing crisis would harm Canadians. But the Leader of the Opposition doesn't care about harming Canadians. What he wants to do is gain power, and he'll do anything he can to do that. While we stay focused on Canadians, he's focused on himself.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has run a groundbreaking experiment. He's put billions of dollars in a sack and offered it to politicians, and the finding? They're willing to accept the money. Incredible. A groundbreaking sociological study. He wants to give more money to local politicians who block home building. We want to use the same money to cut taxes for the people who buy homes and build homes. Why won't we allow Canadians to decide whether they want the money to go to the politicians or to the people in a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, at least the Conservative Leader is true to form in that he would rather pick fights with everyone than actually deliver for Canadians. We know, as we saw during the pandemic, as we've seen through the inflation challenges, working together with the provinces, working together with municipalities to get things built for Canadians is what they want. What does the Leader of the Opposition do? He insults people, but then he also votes against direct money in Canadians' pockets, whether it's with investments in childcare or dental care, whether it's investments in taking the tax off of groceries for the next few months. These are things that he's standing against out of political self-interest.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Just shows how out of control he's become. He can't stay on a subject. He brings up housing, so I agree. I just threw away my script and said, let's debate housing. So he now changes the subject back to his 2-month tax trick. Well, here's the trick, everyone. After the tax break runs out in February, they're going to hike the carbon tax on heat, housing, gas, and groceries, all as a part of a plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. So will he get himself under control, show some strength for a change, and call a carbon tax election?
I don't know how anyone could believe the Liberals anymore. They've had 10 years to do just about everything they are promising right now. It's a joke.
One thing only, Canadians, and how we're there to help Canadians, how we're there to grow a stronger economy for Canadians with direct investments that will support them with free insulin, with dental care, with more spaces in childcare, all things that the Leader of the Opposition is voting against. Yes, we're investing in the most ambitious housing solution that this country has ever seen, things that he didn't do when he was Stephen Harper's failed housing minister. We're going to continue to stand up and fight for Canadians while the Leader of Opposition gets up, pulls off his little performances, and fights against me.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He said he was going to talk about one thing, and then he rambled on about 10 or 15 things, all things he hallucinates that one day he might do if only he were given another 9 years in office, Mr. Speaker. Instead of talking about his real record, which is that he doubled housing costs, he doubled food bank use, he doubled the debt, and now he wants to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Mr. Speaker, we need a Prime Minister who's in control of himself, so why doesn't he call a carbon tax election so we can get one?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'll say it again. The Canada carbon rebate puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians. But the Leader opposite wants to talk about one thing. He talked about food banks. Let's talk about the school food program. This is a program that sends federal dollars directly into school boards, directly to support delivering good food programs for kids. No bureaucracy, just investments in school food programs. The Conservative Leader voted against it, and worse, he forced his own MPs to vote against it, to stand up against their constituents and side with him instead of in Canadians who need help.
Trudeau, your own MPs are voting to boot you out of power. They're not even on the same page.
Chambly. Mr. Speaker, imagine what we could do with $6 billion. Everyone in this House has already voted on a measure for more money for retirees aged 65 to 74. We could put $3 billion in housing, for instance, which would help families. The problem, though, Mr. Speaker, is that the Prime Minister doesn't seem to realize that most of this House no longer has confidence in him. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, from coast to coast to coast, Canadians are struggling. That's why we are helping them directly with a 2-month tax break to help them get through difficult times. We are also offering direct support to workers, those who have been working for a long time. As for seniors, we've invested heavily in them over the past few years. We've also invested significantly in young people. Workers need support too. This rebate will deliver direct support to workers, support that they need. But once again, the Bloc Québécois is just looking for a fight. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. It's clear that retirees and young people must be pretty confused hearing that they've been helped so significantly. Mr. Speaker, no one wants these Christmas goodies, these presents. The Liberal Party of Canada's members of Parliament and all other members here voted in favor of equality for retirees. I think people are ready to pay a certain level of taxes if their money is going to be handled and spent properly. Is the Prime Minister ready to move a confidence vote on his new measures? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois has Bloc Québécois opposition days during which they can set the agenda in the House. Meanwhile, we will continue to work to support seniors, which is what we've been doing for a long time. We will continue to take good care of seniors. We will continue to invest in them. We also want to invest in workers to acknowledge the hard work that they do, to acknowledge the struggles they've been through with global inflation, with the pandemic. We are here to support them. If the Bloc Québécois wishes to vote against workers, then they can feel free to do so, and then they can explain that to workers in Quebec and elsewhere. We are here to support workers. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. We need a plan. We need a plan to protect our economy from President Trump's threats. Americans and Canadian provincial premiers have raised issues of chaos at our borders and within our immigration system. There are 4.9 million visas and permits which will expire in the next 13 months, give or take. If people leave Canada to go to the States illegally, there will be consequences for our economy. What is the plan to guarantee that those who should leave Canada will indeed do so? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, every year in our country, thousands of residence permits, tourist visas, and other visas expire and people return to their countries. We have mechanisms and processes in our immigration systems and at our borders to ensure that people leave when they are supposed to and to ensure that there are consequences when they do not do so. We will continue to keep those systems working. We have also made adjustments in immigration to ensure that immigration meets the challenges of today. We have taken action to strengthen our borders. We are here for Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. But his minister said that it would be impossible to even track whether people do, in fact, leave Canada. The Immigration Minister's Department, the Department of Immigration, just published a statement saying that's according to sources, the number of people who should have left Canada already but are still here is between 20,000 and 500,000. But that there could be even more. There could be more than 500,000 people here who should have left. Mr. Speaker, where's the plan? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we just put forward an immigration plan to bring down immigration levels over the next few years. This will allow home building and the economy to catch up. To meet people's needs. For example, we had more immigrants to address labor shortages. Now, we will, of course, keep our borders strong and protect the integrity of our borders. This is what Canadians expect. This is something we deliver and will continue to deliver. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Our borders, if we're going to protect our economy from President Trump's tariff threats, the Americans and the premiers are all concerned the Prime Minister is too weak to do that. And the data from his own immigration department confirm that fact. According to documents produced by his ministry, there are between 20,000 and 500,000 people in Canada that are not supposed to be here. And there are another 3 million that have to leave within the next year. What is the plan to ensure that people who should leave do leave?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every year there are visitor visas and work permits and student visas that expire, and every year the vast majority of those people return home to their countries. We have procedures and processes in place to make sure that that does happen. We have consequences if they don't. We will continue to strengthen those. But continuing to talk down our country, continue to talk down our systems is something that the Leader of the Opposition is doing because he's more focused on trying to get elected than he is on actually solving the problems Canadians are facing. That's why we continue to step up and deliver on the needs of Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Another weak answer from a weak leader, Mr. Speaker. The reality is he says that people just voluntarily leave when their permits and visas are up. But his minister admitted this week that that is impossible to prove because they don't keep track. And the closest thing they could get to an answer was their department saying estimates from academic sources range from between 20,000 and 500,000 persons, although there may be more. We're talking about people who should not be in our country. So once again, what is the plan?
Send them back home. Canada's full.
Once again, we laid out an immigration plan just a few weeks ago that talks about how we're going to make sure that our immigration numbers allow for our economy to catch up, for our home building to catch up. We have a strong and robust immigration system that has delivered for Canadians over decades now. And the fact that the Leader of the Opposition continually throws up his hands to say that Canada is broken is talking down not just our institutions, but Canadians themselves. Canadians are optimistic and ambitious about the future. That's why we continue to invest in them. His answer is cuts to services, cuts to benefits, cuts to Canadians.
He said his immigration system was robust, but now they're cutting back on it because they realize they've messed up so badly.
That Canadians would see real change to our electoral system. It's been 9 years, and in true Liberal fashion, he broke this promise and let Canadians down. Clearly, this was an election year tactic, and the result, Mr. Speaker, increased division, partisan games, and a lack of representation in Canada's Parliament. And the Conservatives, well, they sure don't want to make it better because they only care about the profits of their rich corporate friends. Will the Prime Minister tell Canadians why he dropped the ball on electoral reform?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I very much care about electoral reform. I've been very clear that I would bring in a ranked ballot tomorrow if we had that option. But really, to see the NDP turning its back on workers right now, asking a question about electoral reform when Canadians are worried about whether or not the opposition parties are going to support the tax break that they need or the investments in workers that they deserve. Right now, we need a party and a parliament that is focused on helping and supporting Canadians as they get us all through this difficult time with their hard work, with their ambition. And right now, talking about politics is the last thing Canadians want to see from this House.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister isn't saying is the fact that seniors and persons with disabilities are workers. No one should have to work more than one full-time job in order to put a roof over their head or to afford food. But a recent report from the Edmonton suggests that the minimum wage just isn't enough to survive. People are having to make tough choices. They cannot afford their groceries, they cannot afford their medication, and they cannot afford their rent. But the Liberals are holding up relief by excluding seniors and persons with disabilities in the $250 rebate. Worse yet, the Conservatives would cut. Will the Liberals stop letting Canadians down during this difficult time?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as of next year, because of this government, Canadians with disabilities will be receiving $200 every single month. That is making a real difference in the lives of Canadians living with disabilities, and we know there is more to do, and we will be doing more. In regards to workers, it's astonishing to see the new Democratic Party of Canada turn its back on workers and say that workers don't deserve a little support. Workers don't deserve to be recognized for the efforts that they did to get us through the pandemic, to get us through the global inflation crisis. These are things that we're standing up to see and recognize workers, and the NDP is blocking it.
The Honourable Member for Kingston and the Islands.
Mr. Speaker, last week our government announced measures that will provide financial supports for Canadians over the holidays. These measures should be supported by all MPs. However, we know the Leader of the Opposition has muzzled his members. According to one Conservative MP, we recently learned that, quote, everybody is being watched. What we say, what we do, who we talk to, end quote. The Leader of the Conservative Party has gone so far as to stop his MPs from asking the government for supports. Can the Prime Minister explain why the Leader of the Opposition should unmuzzle his MPs and allow them to support Canadians instead of forcing them to repeat his embarrassingly bad slogans?
That question is not regarding the administration of government.
Ooh. Darth Fungus. About to lay the smackdown.
The administration of government.
Ooh.
Stop, please. Order, please. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it looks like the member for Kingston is not getting into cabinet after all.
There you go.
Some people bring happiness wherever they go, others bring happiness whenever they go. Mr. Speaker, this is a 2-month tax trick that will print cash, add to inflation, and make Canadians worse off. And if the Prime Minister disagrees, why won't he stop being so weak? Why won't he have the courage to call a carbon tax election and allow Canadians to vote to axe the tax?
Yes, when Emperor Fergus stands up, you must listen.
Speaker, Canadians elect members of Parliament to be their voice in Ottawa, not Ottawa's voice or their leader's voice in their communities. But the Conservative leader shamefully puts his own interests ahead of Canadians. We announced a tax break for all Canadians, a $250 rebate to put more money in the pockets of working Canadians, and Conservative MPs know their constituents want this, need this, and support this, but the Conservative leader is muzzling them and forcing them to vote against direct support for Canadians. Shame on him.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister's radical liberalization of hard drugs has been lethal for Canadians, 47,000 of whom have died of overdoses since this Prime Minister took office, more than died in the Second World War fighting for Canada. Overdose deaths are up 200%, and now our American friends say they may hit us with tariffs because of the Prime Minister's liberal policies on fentanyl. How many lives and jobs is this Prime Minister willing to sacrifice for his radical liberal agenda?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we are using all the tools at our disposal to save lives and keep communities safe for everyone. Meanwhile, Conservatives are choosing to use struggling people as political props to spread fear and misinformation. From the very beginning, we have been there to work on an evidence-based, compassionate public policy, public health approach. We have been there and we will always be there to work with provinces and territories to meet this time of crisis. While the Conservative leader plays politics, we're going to be there to support Canadians grounded in science and evidence.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the science and evidence are now proven. After 9 years of radical liberalization of drugs, overdose deaths are up by 200%. And the worst overdose numbers come from British Columbia, where the policies have been most radically and enthusiastically implemented. But the NDP Liberals claimed that they were backtracking on decriminalization because it became so unpopular. Just this week, NDP Liberals voted for a committee report that called for full legalization of hard drugs. Will the Prime Minister admit that is his real agenda?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, having an evidence-based and a science-based approach, compassionate public policy approach grounded in health care to the opioid epidemic is what we need to do, not just to save lives, but to create safer communities. While the Leader of the Opposition plays politics and uses suffering people as props to propagate a brokenist view of this country, we're going to continue to roll up our sleeves, work hard with provinces and territories to respond to this tragedy, to make sure we're putting Canadians first in everything we do.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister's radical drug agenda is not the only thing that is broken. Our economy is broken as well. We now have 2 million people forced to go to food banks every single month, a 38% increase in chronic homelessness, 1,400 homeless encampments, and just today, Equifax reported that consumer debt is $2.5 trillion. We have the worst household debt of all G7 countries. When will he call a carbon tax election so that we can fix everything he broke?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the answers the Conservative leader is putting forward to the challenges of Canadians facing homelessness or the challenges of food banks is to cut the programs that are actually investing in direct supports for people. Whether it's money we're investing in municipalities and provinces to reduce encampments and to build more homes quicker, he wants to cut that. Whether it's the money we're moving forward directly to schools across the country so they can deliver more schools, more food, and take pressure off of grocery bills, he's voted against that, Mr. Speaker. His only agenda is cuts and austerity while we help Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. We told them. The Journal de Montréal reveals a surge in asylum requests at the border. The Lacal border crossing received more than 80 applications between Saturday and Sunday, about 7 times the recent average. A vice president of the Customs Union has said that in terms of employees, they're not ready to take on many people. And it confirms 2 things. 1, we were right to predict a rise in migration caused by Donald Trump. 2, we were right to predict that the federal government isn't ready, as usual. When will this Prime Minister take action at the borders?
Probably never.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, this is just anything we're hearing from the bloc. We renegotiated the Safe Third Country Agreement with which makes sure people who come to border crossings must do their asylum request at the first safe country where they find themselves. This means in the U.S., Mr. Speaker. And yes, we did solve this issue with the U.S. By renegotiating this agreement, and the bloc is ignoring this. They're just looking for squabbles rather than reflecting real facts. We're always going to take care of our borders rigorously. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. It's mind-boggling. Everyone warned them. We knew the Liberals were no good with the border, so the bloc warned them, even before the U.S. election, that if Donald Trump won, there would be a surge in migration to the border. Quebec warned them, immigration lawyers warned them, organization warned them. We warned them as well, Mr. Speaker. And then, just as asylum requests start to climb, the union tells us that it's short-staffed at the border. And once again, the Prime Minister has no plan. Is he doing it on purpose, Mr. Speaker? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is so proud of his written question that he didn't even hear my answer to his first question. We renegotiated the Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States to ensure that people who come to our border crossings should have presented themselves to the U.S. to seek asylum rather than coming to Canada. We do have a solution to this issue, a solution that we implemented as a government, but the bloc doesn't want to recognize the facts. They just want to scare Quebecers. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. We have a Prime Minister who is weak and a weak economic position. Facing the threats from Donald Trump, Mr. Speaker, now we're learning that the PM doesn't even know the extent of the deficit. Spending's out of control, and it goes up day by day when the PM is trying to buy the support of the bloc and the NDP to keep himself in power. So I ask him the question again very slowly. How much is the deficit of the Government of Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will present our economic statement shortly, and the opposition leader can react to that. But I know full well that he will already vote against it, like he voted against all the initiatives that we established to help Canadians. Like, for example, our tax break that is coming up in the coming months for Canadians. He doesn't think that Canadians need this. We have the best fiscal situation of all our G7 partners, and he refuses to help Canadians. Why? Because he'd rather people be in a difficult situation to vote for him, but we are going to be here to help Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. He is a weak Prime Minister that has lost control. He lost the control of the borders, lost control on migration, lost control of public spending. So he says that he can't say how big the deficit is, even though he already had a budget for this year. That's strange. That's the first time I've heard that from a Prime Minister. So we'll ask an easier question. What was the deficit of the government of Canada last year? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative leader continues to block and vote against initiatives that will help Canadians, he is trying to find ways to attack me. But we will be tackling and helping support for Canadians. We will be creating a tax break in coming months that the Conservatives will vote against. We're going to deliver assistance for workers that the Conservatives will vote against, like they voted against dental care, like they voted against school food programs, like they voted against more daycare spots. They don't want Canadians to do better because he wants to convince everyone that everything's broken. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Prime Minister who's lost control of everything. He's lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, and lost control of spending. Recently it came to light that the deficit is much bigger than his finance minister reported in the recent budget. Now, the Prime Minister claims that he can't tell us what the deficit is for this year. Okay, so we'll make it easier for him. What was the deficit last year?
Yeah.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we see the lengths to which the Conservative leader will go to not talk about the fact that we are proposing a tax break for Canadians over the coming.
And we see the lengths you go to deflect and not answer questions and divert to something completely different. You do it time and time again, and it just continues to show how weak of a leader you are when you are asked simple questions and you cannot deliver on them. You are an absolute joke. You are looked at as a joke by not just everybody in your own caucus, but everybody in Canadian Parliament and worldwide.
That's what we'll continue to do.
The Honourable Member for Sudbury. Mr. Speaker, like everywhere else, affordability is an important issue in my riding. Sudbury workers were pleased to learn that they will receive a $250 check to support them. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians what other measures have been announced to support them as the holidays approach? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for Sudbury for her question and for her hard work. We know that the last few years have been tough, and that's why we're going to give a tax break to all Canadians. This means that Canadians won't have any tax to pay for 2 months on groceries and other essential goods that they use every day. We're putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians so they can buy what they need and save to buy what they wish.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, to show how weak he is, he actually has to read a script just to talk about his tiny 2-month tax break. My question a moment ago, though, was about the deficit. He admits that deficits contribute to inflation. We now have reports from the Parliamentary Budget Officer that he appointed showing that the deficit is far bigger than he advertised in his last budget. So once again, I'll ask slowly, what was Canada's federal deficit last year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I'll take no lessons from someone who stays up late every night rehearsing his little performances in the mirror. The fact, Mr. Speaker, is we're continuing to step up for Canadians because we have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio and are projected to have the strongest growth in the G7 ahead of the United States next year. These are things that we've done because we've been investing not just in Canadians and support for them, but also in drawing in global investment. Third largest foreign direct investment in the world last year, Mr. Speaker. People investing in Canada because they believe in Canadians. Why doesn't the Leader of the Opposition believe in Canadians?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I know the Prime Minister said that he'll leave the economy to bankers. Well, the bankers are sure rolling in cash, collecting interest on the national debt that he has already doubled, while Canadians line up at food banks. The question, though, was about the size of the deficit. You cannot run a $500 billion G7 government if you don't know anything about the finances of that government. So can the Prime Minister tell us, does he actually know the size of the deficit?
Uh-oh.
The Right Honourable Prime
I don't think
Minister.
Trudeau knows much of
Mr.
anything.
Speaker, what we are focused on is delivering for Canadians, is being there to recognize that Canadians need support now as we build a stronger future for them. That's why we're drawing in global investment to a higher rate than just about any other country per capita in the G20. We are delivering things that make a real difference in Canadians' lives, like dental care, like a school food program, like more spaces in childcare at $10 a day, like a tax break for the next 2 months, like direct support for workers. All things, Mr. Speaker, that the Conservatives are voting against because they care more about themselves than they do about Canadians.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he doesn't know.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't know. No. It's scary.
I was tempted to accuse him of hiding it, but you know, as Napoleon Bonaparte said, never attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence.
Yep.
Oh.
Mr. Speaker, who's actually running this government?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to focus on me, I'm going to stay focused on delivering for Canadians, delivering a tax break for the next few months that will help Canadians with the cost of everything, deliver on supports for workers, deliver on supports for seniors, deliver on supports for youth. These are all things that the Conservative Party votes against. Not because Conservative MPs don't care about these things, but because they've been throttled and muzzled by their leader.
If this tax break actually goes through, the months after the tax break ends are going to be very rough. Things are going to get very, very bad. And very quickly, too. Trudeau's acting like he's not missing out on millions of dollars. And the government won't be losing millions of dollars by cutting taxes. It's gonna be wild, guys.
Mr. Speaker, people...
Order, please.
They're gonna have to get that money back one way or another, whether they tax large businesses or whether they tax Canadians even further. And if they tax large businesses, that just means the prices of everything goes up, and then minimum wage probably has to go up again. So it won't make things better.
A serious risk. This isn't about politics, Mr. Speaker. This is about access to health care and Canadians. Can the Prime Minister remind us all, what is at risk if this House continues to put politics...
Excuse me. I'm going to... Colleagues.
It's almost like we are in the never-ending doom loop of they continue to raise things, and then they raise the minimum wage. And then because of that, the companies go, well, we need to make more money, so they raise things again. And then the government taxes them, so then they raise things again. And then they go, well, people aren't making enough, so then we have to raise minimum wage again. And then the companies go, oh, we're not making enough, so we have to raise the prices again. And it's a never-ending loop. Nothing is going to be accomplished by getting rid of taxes on goods for 2 months. It only creates a loop of never-ending soaring prices.
Plan. but the Conservative Party's stubborn blocking of the House for their social media clips is putting this program at serious risk. This isn't about politics, Mr. Speaker. This is about Canadians. This is about access to health care. Can the Prime Minister remind us all what is at risk if this House continues with politics over Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Vaughan Woodbridge for his hard work on the file and his question. Canadians are not surprised to see Conservative leader blocking key programs to support them. But I think we're all kind of surprised to see the NDP standing by. The NDP is actually helping Conservatives block dental care, health care for refugees, clean drinking water for Indigenous communities. The NDP owes it to Canadians to stop playing the Conservative Party's games, do the right thing, and end this obstruction of Parliament so we can all deliver for Canadians.
Order. Order. The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' housing failure hurts people experiencing gender-based violence. Women's Shelters Canada found that because of the rising cost of housing, almost all shelters are unable to meet increased demand. This is forcing women into precarious housing or to return to abusive situations. The Liberals are compromising safety because of their failed housing plans, and the Conservatives care so little they heckle during this critical life and death question. Will the Prime Minister commit to increase investments in affordable rent-geared-to-income housing today?
Here's a question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, no one should have to return to a violent or at-risk situation because they can't find housing, because they can't get into a shelter. That's why we continue to step up to work with provinces and municipalities to ensure that there are options for people fleeing domestic violence. It is a deadly serious question, Mr. Speaker, and we will always be there to work with provinces, territories, and municipalities to support women and anyone fleeing domestic violence.
The honourable member for Spadina Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, in 2024, 358
Let's go, Kevin.
people on the U.S. terror watch list were stopped from crossing into the United States from Canada. How did these terrorists enter Canada in the first place? The immigration minister's failure to secure our borders puts Canadians in danger, and his incompetence has now placed Canada's economy at risk with a 25% Trump trade tariff. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister fire this incompetent minister before he does even more damage to Canada?
Okay. Gotta love when Kevin Vaughn speaks. Guy gives no fucks.
Should turn to his friend, the leader of the Conservative Party, and ask him why he is refusing top-secret briefings on national security. He should ask his buddy, the Conservative leader, why he will not get the security clearance necessary to understand how to better protect his party and Canadians. The Conservative leader refuses to take top-secret briefings or get a security clearance because he would rather play politics with Canadian safety than actually act to keep Canadians safe. Shame on that member. Shame on the Conservative
leader. Points of order. The honourable member for
Oh, points
Regina
of
Capel.
order. It could get crazy.
Not only can words be unparliamentary, but gestures can be as well. And I was in the process of negotiating with the government House leader whether or not we could get unanimous consent to table the text messages from the Liberal member for Vaughan Woodbridge when he was asking to join our caucus. Mr. Speaker, as I was in the process of doing that, the Liberal member for Vaughan Woodbridge made a very vulgar and rude gesture, giving the middle finger to this side of the House. That is extremely unparliamentary, and I would ask the honourable member to apologize.
This is when the circus really starts, during point of order.
Order! The honourable member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, at this moment in time, I seem to be...
No! What happened? Why did it go down? The CPAC site just went down! Ladies and gentlemen, this is not what I expected. This is a terrible turn of events. What happened?
For 9 years, I've always tried to act in the most honorable way with all members of Parliament and all things. I actually co-chair some committees with the Conservative members, and that is my reputation. I have nothing to apologize about, Mr. Speaker. I raise my hand to give the script to the page, and that's it, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
He didn't apologize. He is not apologizing.
Je vois que l'honorable député de...
I see that the honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable is rising on a new point of order. Mr. Speaker, you know that in this place we must respect the honour and the words of those who rise to speak. That said, people have the responsibility of being honest for their colleagues, for their constituents. Mr. Speaker, I saw the gesture in question with my own eyes. Right, so that's on the same point of order. I ask the honourable member to please sit. I heard the point of order. The member in question rose and said, honourably, I presume, that he did not make the gesture that he was accused of making. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable mentioned that the chair does presume the honour and honourable nature of all members. That said, as one member has suggested, the chair will look into the matter and watch the camera feed. I will bring this matter up again if necessary. Point of order. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
This is so pathetic.
I hope that this is not on the same point of order that the chair just ruled on. Mr. Speaker, I feel offended. You just cast doubt on my word and on what I said that I saw my colleague do, and I find that unacceptable, Mr. Speaker.
I'm offended that the taxpayers have to continue to pay for these clowns to cry about insults to one another. Can we move on?
It being 3:27, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the sub-amendment of Mr. Garrettson to the motion to concur in the 12th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Call in the members.
All right, and that is gonna do it for me. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. Usually point of order can get a little more crazy. The last few point of orders were pretty wild. Darth Fungus ended up banning 3 Conservative MPs last week. That was a crazy point of order. But anyway, thank you all for joining. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day or night, depending where you are from. Thank you very much for spending your time with us here. And I will see you tomorrow, roughly the same time, for question period. Have a great day or night. See ya.